Hello, hello, hello. How are you guys doing today? Okay, a little bit more of a serious video over here today, which is why I'm not doing my intro. I had planned today to do a reaction to the Reddit thread AITA, am I the a-hole? I did one a while ago and I really enjoyed doing that. And so I thought I'm gonna try to do one a week because there were a lot of people that responded to me and said, I really enjoyed you doing these. So I'm gonna start doing those like once a week. And that was my plan to do that today. But I saw all this stuff late last night come out about Sean Combs and Sean Diddy Combs, and I was like, I don't really know what's going on with this story. I haven't followed it closely at all. I know that they went into his house and did a search of things and took a lot of things out of the house, and that happened, I think, a couple months ago, maybe 2 months ago or something like that. But I haven't really been following this story very much. Now, trigger warning before I get into this story, because I'm gonna do a live reaction reading the article. I kind of like skimmed through it a little bit. So I just wanted to kind of see how long the article was. I tried to pull up the most recent article. The most recent article is from the New York Post. Maybe not the most reputable, but it has all the information in it, and it's quite a long article, and so I'm just going to live react to it because I don't really know a lot about this story, and I'm sure that there are a lot of you that watch my channel that don't know a lot about this story, so I thought that we would get educated together. But like I said, trigger warning, there is a lot of discussion in here about trafficking, and SA and things like that. So I just want to put that trigger warning out there ahead of time for anybody that might be watching this video that might be triggered by that don't want to hear about those things. Okay, so I didn't realize, I thought he was like 10 years younger than me. He's 2 years older than me. I'm 52 and he's 54, and I didn't realize that. But I've grown up my life like knowing who he was and knowing his music and things like that. And I have to be honest with you, like when this came out a couple months ago, I just was like, I don't even really understand what's going on. So late last night, I was just like rolling through Instagram, and I saw that Emily Baker, she put up a post or Instagram story. She does a lot of, like, for those of you that don't know who Emily Baker is, she covers a lot of legal cases. She's an attorney that like gets online and does live streams and covers legal cases. She does videos and things like that. She has a podcast, and she covers major cases. And so he had been arrested. I believe it was yesterday, maybe the day before, but I think it was the day before maybe, that Sean Combs was arrested, and that he was going to be released, but they were going to release the reasons why, because at that time nobody knew why he had been arrested. They didn't understand, and then so there was like, they were going to release all of the charges and what those were today. And so I saw that she put that up yesterday, and so I wanted to go in today and I wanted to see what this was about. This is kind of not really a typical video that I do over here. And I'm sure that there are a lot of people that are like, I wish you would have, read the article, did your research, and committed it to memory, and then presented it to us. But, I mean, obviously these reporters are much better versed on it than I am. So I just want to kind of do a live reaction to this because I don't really know anything about this story. And for those of you that watch my vlog, I talk a lot about this on my vlog. I'm somebody that heavily watches true crime, and I'm also somebody that knows a lot about what's going on in the pop culture world. There are a lot of stories that I kind of, like, I have a really, really hard time watching, like the R. Kelly case. I really had a hard time watching a lot of that. And so, like, this, for me, falls very much in that category. Some of what I saw, the implications are huge. The implications of his charges are huge. I mean, almost like kind of, unbelievable. I believe them, but they just are so, like, I mean, it is so unbelievable. So let me get into this article, and then I'm just going to live react to it while I'm reading it. So the article is titled, and this is from like 2 hours ago. It's the most recent article. That's why I picked it. I wanted to pick the most recent article that had been put out. Sean Diddy Combs slapped with sex trafficking, racketeering conspiracy as bombshell charges unsealed in New York City court. Embattled rapper and hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs was hit with sex trafficking and racketeering charges Tuesday as part of a probe that accuses him of abusing women, wow, and forcing them to engage in so-called freak-off performances to fulfill his sick sexual desires federal prosecutors said. The bombshell indictment against Combs, 54, was unsealed after he was arrested at the Park Hyatt, New York in Manhattan late Monday. Some 6 months after, I guess it was 6 months ago, some 6 months after the feds raided his mansions in Los Angeles and Miami as part of the investigation into the alleged decades-long abuse. Now, I do remember when that happened and they raided his homes and they, did a search and seizure and they took things out of there, that he denied anything. He said that there was nothing going on and he denied all that, is what I believe. Like, that's the last thing I really kept up with it. I mean, I'm going into this completely like I have no idea what's going on with this story whatsoever. The fallen music mogul, I mean, I know he's had accusations of abuse and things like that. And I'm not minimizing that, but I didn't realize it was like on this level. I had no clue. And really haven't kept up with the story that much. The fallen music mogul was expected to be hauled before a Manhattan federal judge later Tuesday on the 3 federal charges of racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. The 14-page indictment paints Combs as the kingpin of a criminal enterprise that allowed him to allegedly abuse, threaten, and coerce women for years to fulfill sexual, and I'm using quotation marks because they're using quotation marks, to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. To do so, Combs relied on, this is all part of the documentation. To do so, Combs relied on his employees, resources, and influence of the multifaceted business empire that he led and controlled, creating a criminal enterprise whose members and associates engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other crimes, sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice, the complaint says. As part of this sordid empire of sexual crimes, Combs would allegedly lure female victims and male sex workers into drugged up, often days-long sexual performances dubbed freak-offs, the indictment charges. This is so sad. The women, who were often roped in under the pretense of a romantic relationship, would then be plied with drugs in a bid to keep them obedient and compliant, according to the court papers. So, for those of you that don't know, I have been sober for 29 years and 8 months at this point, and if I make it to December 17th, I will have, we say that in recovery because we don't borrow time. So if I make it to December 17th, I will have had 30 years of continuous sobriety. I work a 12-step program. This is recovery month. Just because I work a 12-step program doesn't mean that that's the only way, obviously, to stay sober. There are many, many ways to stay sober. And I respect all those ways. I just don't want people to die from drugs and alcohol. I want people to have long lives. This story, although it seems so out there, is remarkably familiar to me of things that I have heard in recovery through the years. Really makes me sad. I worked in treatment for 13 years in an addictions treatment facility, and I can remember during that period, there was a task force that was designed by the Indianapolis Police Department because there were people that were being, this was a time that in the Midwest and in Indiana, I know it's now on a huge level, but at that time, it was when it had just started, crystal methamphetamine was a huge deal within the gay community, and it just started like in the small country towns of the Midwest. And this is when we were seeing meth factories like blown up in trailers and things like that. And so I know that there was this task force that was designed in Indianapolis to basically take down this ring. And what this ring was doing was it was bringing in gay prostitutes that were... I think, what makes me really, really sad about this, and I have known my fair share of sex workers in my life and every different aspect of that, and I think there's a dehumanization that goes along just because somebody chooses to have that as their career. Many people don't really have any other resources, and I know that that probably sounds strange to the, people out there. They're like, what do you mean that they don't have any resources? There's a lot of people out there that don't have any other resources to pay their bills, and, and then there's people, and that was of the past, and today, I think there are so many people out there that choose that, and so when we use words like this, I think to some degree, there's a negative connotation that maybe they deserve it or whatever. And I think that that's really, really sad in our society today. And I remember this task force was designed, and I was really, when I heard about it, because I was educated on it, working, in addictions treatment, and I worked within the Department of Corrections. At that point, I was a liaison between the Department of Corrections and the treatment facility. I did assessments to decide if people were appropriate for treatment that were in the Department of Corrections. And And so I was talking to judges and probation officers, parole officers, many of which are still friends of mine today. And I can remember when they put together this huge task force, because what was being found was that there were several organizations that were putting together gay male prostitutes and using them and getting them hooked on crystal methamphetamine and then prostituting them out so that they had to prostitute to basically pay off their drug fines. And so it was this rotation of this cycle that they got stuck in. And when we know that, addiction is a cycle anyway, that it's just, feeding the dragon, basically, as we say with heroin addiction, that it's a cycle that you get stuck in and having to use, not being able to get off of it, and how do you pay? And so this, to me, to some degree, kind of reminds me of that a little bit. Luring people in, promising them romantic relationships, promising them other things under the guise of that, getting them hooked on drugs, and then using them for days on end. It's very, very dehumanizing. And watching a lot and covering, and I have a true crime book club. It's listed below if you guys would like to join it. I run it with my good friend Mel. And every month we pick a different true crime book that we're going to read. I watch a lot of true crime documentaries. And one thing that we do in the true crime book club, and one thing that I always look for in watching true crime cases, is how much homage is paid to the victim. Like, is the victim's story honored? Because I think that that's something that's really, really important in talking about any, case that we're talking about today. And I just actually, and on my Peter Watches TV channel, where I cover a lot of true crime over there, I just watched Into the Fire, a 2-part documentary. And it was fantastically done, and it really, really honored the victim in there. So I hope that the victim's stories are heard as this case unfolds, is what I really, really hope, because I think this is so sad. Combs would watch and masturbate during the elaborate and produced sex performances, which he would allegedly film to use as collateral against his victims. It's so sad. I mean, that these people in their most desperate times and most, tragic and traumatic moments are being, recorded to then later be blackmailed to not come out against him. Referencing, again, true crime, there was a documentary that was put out about the Ken and Barbie murders in Canada. And I remember watching it, and their victim, they had recorded. They had recorded all these sexual incidences and things before she was murdered. And her mom petitioned for the videotape to be destroyed, because one of the things that she said was that every time it was shown in court, and I know this wouldn't make a lot of sense to the first time you hear it, and it actually took a couple times for me to actually hear it in the show to really get it, and I was like, that is a pretty profound statement, that just the fact that that videotape existed with these crimes committed on there, that every time it was shown in a courtroom, that every time that somebody would watch it in the police department, or every time it was referenced, that her daughter was being re-abused again. And so the mother petitioned for the videotape to be destroyed, and it eventually was. I think it's a really interesting way of looking at things when we talk about being recorded without, your permission and things like that, especially in a situation like this where a crime is being committed, and then later using that and obviously these are charges, I don't know the validity to these charges, obviously, and things like that, but it's just really, really sad to me that these people are going to continue to be traumatized for years on end after this, right? The regularly occurring encounters could last for days, and Combs and the victims would often receive IV fluids in the aftermath to recover from the physical exertion and drug use, the feds allege. So this is all alleged. Here's what we know about the allegations against Sean Diddy Combs. Sean and Diddy Combs' homes in Los Angeles and Miami were raided by Homeland Security in March amid a possible ongoing sex trafficking investigation. That's huge. Authorities targeted the rappers' homes to seize phones and computers, sources told the Post. At least 4 Jane Does and 1 John Doe have been interviewed by New York prosecutors in connection to sex trafficking allegations and RICO case, sources told Rolling Stone. Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassandra Ventura, filed a lawsuit against him in November 2023 on several allegations, including and physical abuse for over a decade, and I do remember that coming out. There's like videotapes, I think, of that. And again, it's the re-traumatizing of it. Combs and Cassie settled the lawsuit one day after she filed it. And this is where, like, we see this, like, they settled the case, and it's like, okay, so you paid a lot of money for her to shut up, basically, I'm assuming is what probably happened. And that's sad because that's something that she's going to have to live with for the rest of her life. This isn't something that just goes away with a paycheck, you know? In November 2023, the rapper was accused of drugging, filming, and sexually assaulting a woman on a date in 1991. And it goes in here and it has the entire, like, transcript. You can go in there and you can read the entire transcript of the charges. A third woman filed a lawsuit against the celebrity in November 2023, claiming that he and singer-songwriter Aaron Hall took turns sexually assaulting her and a friend in the early 1990s. In December 2023, Combs was hit with a fourth sexual assault lawsuit that accused him and others of sexually assaulting a 17-year-old girl at his New York City recording studio after drugging her and supplying her with alcohol. In September 2024, Diddy was sued by Dawn Richard, a participant on Combs' 2004 MTV show Making the Band, claiming that he once broke into her dressing room and began groping her breasts and butt. So sad. This whole thing is just, you know. His employees allegedly helped facilitate the freak-offs by arranging travel, booking hotel rooms where they'd take place, and then stock the rooms with supplies, including drugs, baby oil, lubricants, and extra linen. Some of those so-called freak-off supplies were seized by the feds during the raids on his home, the complaint says. The sick details emerged after Combs was hit with a flurry of lawsuits over the past year by people who allege... Hold on, it just went out. Okay. The sick details emerged after Combs was hit with a flurry of lawsuits over the past year by people who allege he subjected them to physical or sexual abuse during the height of his fame as a producer in the 1990s and 2000s. He was first accused of a years-long pattern of domestic and sexual violence and even trafficking against his former girlfriend, R&B singer Cassie Ventura, in a federal lawsuit she filed against him in November. While the case was quickly settled out of court, a wave of other lawsuits alleging sexual assault followed, all of which he strongly denied. Many of the allegations of abuse in today's bombshell indictment mirror those in the civil suits filed against Combs in recent months, including from his ex-girlfriend. The indictment, though, unveiled new depraved details of Combs' alleged racketeering ring, including how he enlisted his personal assistant, security, and household staffers to help him hide his alleged violence. Prosecutors painted Combs as a violent man who choked, hit, kicked, and dragged his victims by the hair, causing injuries that could sometimes take weeks to heal. His associates and employees, dubbed the Combs Enterprise, sometimes witnessed the attacks and would force the victims into hiding for days or track down those who did leave to keep their injuries hidden in the filing states. When the threat of criminal charges loomed, the music star and his so-called empire offered the alleged victims bribes to stay quiet, according to the indictment. While the indictment doesn't specifically name Ventura, it does reference a March 2016 incident in which video from a California hotel showed him grabbing, shoving, and kicking his then girlfriend. I remember that one. The court papers allege Combs tried to bribe a hotel security staffer to stay quiet about the incident. Douglas so-and-so, a lawyer for Ventura, declined to comment Tuesday in the wake of Combs' indictment. Meanwhile, his attorney said outside court that Combs would plead not guilty to the charges and that he would fight like hell to try to get his client released from custody. His spirits are good. He's confident, Mark Agnifulo said of Combs after the indictment came down. Combs dodged legal trouble before. He was acquitted on weapons charges in Manhattan Supreme Court over a 1999 shooting at a Big Apple nightclub that injured 3 people. Combs, then 31, was accused of firing a shot into the ceiling of the Midtown Dance Club, then trying to bribe his chauffeur to take the rap for a second gun found in the getaway car he shared with his ex-girlfriend, Jennifer Lopez. This whole thing is just so tragic and sad. And, you know, I think, like, when it's in there and it's talking about bribes and money paid and on and on and on. And I think the hardest thing for me is that all these victims of what happened, you know, I've sat in rooms and with people and friends of mine for, you know, 29 and a half years, and complete strangers, close friends that are victims of horrific abuse. And you can be paid all the money in the world, you can be bribed all the money that you want, you can be dehumanized, you can be, you know, pointing the fingers at, you can be blamed, you can be called all those names, but you can't take that away. You know, you cannot take away what has been done to you. And it's years and years and years of unraveling, of learning how to come out of that. And so, to some degree, the damage is already done. Makes me so sad. And, I mean, these are all right now just allegations, and they're in the indictment. So I don't know. I guess we'll find out the truth. It just really makes me really sad, you know. about what happens, you know, especially in a world where I'm sure that a lot of fans of his will come out against these victims when we live in a world where the victims should be believed. And I think to come out against somebody like a major celebrity like this has got to be really, really scary. And which is probably why they're, you know, the names Jane Doe and John Doe and things like that. And I'm sure that there's so many more that are terrified to come out and share their stories. It's just a dehumanization of a victim is really what it is. And it makes me so sad. And I don't know. It's really just, it's really, really a sad day. It's so much bigger than Sean Diddy Combs and all this. It's really about those people out there that, you know, don't have a name or don't have a voice, that have had their power taken away from them. And who knows what their lives will look like from here going out. It's really, really sad. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section below. I love you guys. And I promise to come back with a happier video tomorrow. I just wanted to kind of educate myself on this so I knew what was going on in case I want to make a further video about it, talking about it down the road. Anyway, I love you guys and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.